Hello everyone, today is super muggy. I don't know what happened, but it was like an explosion of heat the past 2 days. If you've never lived in a humid climate, it's like sitting in a sauna. So I'm gonna sit here and let all the toxins release from pores as I do this video. Therefore, I didn't do my makeup today, just a little lip gloss. My topic today is about opinions. Everybody has opinions. Everybody has more than one opinion. There used to be a phrase about that. If you know it, you know it. But everybody has a different personality. And along with that are our opinions. And everybody knows how opinions are formed. They're based on our experiences, our upbringing, things that we've learned ourselves, our environments. That's where our opinions come from. Some people are very set in their ways. Some people through tragedy have deep-rooted opinions because they know they've been there. Some people have opinions not based on fact, but things that they just assumed. That's the opinion I want to talk about today. Opinions based on assumptions. I think we need to have this candid conversation because it's very overwhelming to open the internet at all these days. There are so many opinions about anything in the world. I used to have a phrase like, if I say the sky is blue, somebody tells me it's gray. Everybody seems to think they're their own expert in whatever topic it is. That's when it becomes unhealthy, and that's when it becomes toxic, and that's when it becomes dangerous. Imagine if I sat here and tried to push any assumed opinion from myself onto the general public in a YouTube channel. What would that cause? It would cause bias. People might believe it, and they might go on and repeat it, even if it's not true. I try to be very tactful, and I try to see both sides. And when somebody presents me with a different opinion that I have, I always try to see through it and say, hey, that is interesting. I try not to have a closed mind. Opinions turn hostile when they're not based on purely life experience or something they themselves have gone through, but yet assumptions because they think they're right. They may have heard it or read it online, and then they established a bias-based opinion because of something they heard, which is hearsay or an assumption. Yet the climate seems to be, even if you've never experienced something, even if you've never been there, done that, you develop this attitude towards the person that's actually out there doing it. There was a young man in my neighborhood, and he was an avid bicyclist. He had a mountain bike, and he used to go out onto the hiking trails here, and unfortunately, his bike hit a boulder one day, and he flipped over the handlebars and did something. Now he's a paraplegic, and he's in a nursing home, and he was only like 20, and he's been living there ever since. Sad, tragic case. However, it hasn't happened since. It was a one-time thing, but that doesn't mean it can't happen again. So the takeaway from that, or an opinion from that, would be use caution, especially when you're biking some trails that have rocks, because you never know, if you hit a rock, you could flip over your handlebars. As a kid, I did that too. I came up my driveway when my grandfather was planting the corn, and bam, I smacked right into a stone wall, flipped over the handlebars, landed on my back. Thankfully, it was just a bunch of road burn and nothing else. Maybe a broken thumb. But that's all. I never developed an opinion, though, based on that, and told everybody you should never ride a bike. It's dangerous. That's silly. But some people have that opinion based on fear because they heard about this situation, they saw the situation, and they developed this attitude So now that we have the internet, that person that develops that attitude is online. Well, you should never ride a bike. It's not good for you. If you hit a rock, you could become a paraplegic. That's ridiculous. That's nonsense. And that's fear mongering. Let's take another example. I have a friend who I'm trying to disassociate with because she is so opinionated, and it's gotten worse. It's gotten to the point where I can't stomach talking to her. And I don't mean to sound like that, but I can't help it. I really can't. It's not good for me to talk to this woman. She had children. They're older than mine. And she says the most awful things to me about parenting. The parenting advice is not based on fact. The parenting advice is based on her attitude and opinion of raising children. We do not see eye to eye in this category at all. She believes that children should move out of the house when they're 17, right before their 18th birthday, so they can learn it for themselves. Okay, well, when she moved out of her house, times were different. She moved out at 17 because she was pregnant. Her husband was in the military. She also lived with her mother-in-law. So she had the help of her mother-in-law, and her husband was the paycheck earner. I did not have that experience. I had a different experience. I was an older mom. I did not have children at 17. My experiences were not like that at all. But she resented her children. I never resented my children. So what I'm saying here is people are all different. The personalities are all different, and their opinions are all different. And in that situation, her opinions were formed because of the resentment she felt because she regretted her life choices. And that's not my fault. She has no business spewing that volatile junk and garbage out to the world to say, well, your kids should be kicked out of the house when they're 17. Really? Come on now. So that's what I'm saying here. Just because somebody feels a certain way does not give them the right to establish the right way. We all have to make that determination for ourselves. We all have to come to the conclusion of what's right for us, what's right for our family, what's right for our children. Let me give you another example. When my children were little, there was an orchard. They sell apples in the fall. They grow pumpkins. They grow corn on the cob. And they have little farm stands all summer. I didn't go there growing up because my grandfather always had a family farm. I always had fresh produce. I had cabbage, corn, everything he grew. Green beans, lettuce. He grew pretty much everything that you could think of at the grocery store produce section. So we didn't go to the farm stand. We didn't have to. We had our own. Well, when my kids were little, I grew gardens. And I had very similar produce. I didn't grow everything, though, like my grandfather. I had the basics to grow salad, basically. Cucumbers, and I didn't even do a good job at that, but I did. Lettuce, green beans, tomatoes, and so forth. My grandfather, he always had fresh corn. He had a field of fresh corn. I was accustomed to that. So when my kids were little, I didn't know how to grow corn. I think we grew it like once and we got a few ears, but that was the only time. I took them to this farmer's market to have that experience of the fresh homegrown corn and bought some produce. And to my surprise, they had a chicken coop and there were a bunch of chickens running around in a pen. And I thought, how fun, because I grew up on a farm. It was my job as a child to take care of the chicken coop and all the chickens, to collect their eggs, to feed and water them. When we approached the chicken coop, my two children at the time were maybe 2 and 3. And they both naturally, instinctively, even though I didn't have chickens when they were growing up, they naturally and instinctively picked some grass. They just picked some grass. I don't remember teaching this to them. They just did it. And they both went up to the little fence and they both held that little stalk of grass in their hand to feed the chickens. And I was like, oh my goodness, they know chickens eat grass. Well, a lady had approached me and she was younger than me because, like I said, I was an older mom. She was probably 20. And she had a little boy who was older than my children. He might have been 4. Cute as a button. And she walked up to me and she heard me say that. And she said, what did you just say? And she was so rude. And I whipped around and I was like, excuse me? And she said, what did you just say? Chickens don't eat grass. And I just looked at her like, I'm sorry? What? My kids didn't wait. They didn't listen to that. They just offered the grass to the chickens. Now let me explain to you, this pen was completely old dirt because the chickens had pecked all the grass clean. So I said, okay, if you really believe that chickens don't eat grass, how do you think the pen got picked clean? And I wasn't being facetious. I wasn't being mean. I was actually trying to help her think about this. And she looked at me and she goes, oh my goodness, really? Well, of course, the farmer took a backhoe and dug it out. I'm sorry. What? You think the farmer took a backhoe and dug out the chicken coop for the chickens so they could be on dirt? Yeah. Okay. So I look over and my children have the little grass and the chickens are eating it. I said, then how do you explain that? How do you explain that the chickens are eating the grass that my kids are offering the chickens? And she just looked at me like I was the dumbest person she had ever met in her life. And she walked away in disgust. She shook that little boy's hand and walked away, repeating it. Chickens don't eat grass, they eat grain. Okay, well, if you think about it, where did the grain come from then? Because there were no grain factories. Yeah, chickens eat grass. They also eat bugs. And yesterday I found out chickens even eat mice. I had no idea. I've never seen a chicken eat a mouse, but I saw it on a video. Sure enough, that chicken went running, chasing this mouse and ate it. So, yeah, chickens eat a lot of different things. They don't just eat grain. That is ridiculous. But see, that is how hostile opinions are formed in the minds of people with bias. She really thought I was the dumbest person on the planet, and how dare I corrupt her small child by even saying or suggesting that a chicken eats grass. Another example, and there are so many. This could be a 24-hour video, because truly there's an opinion for every single thing. I was looking up some stuff online yesterday because I'm being proactive about my health, and I'm trying to do things that are right for me, and I'm trying to adjust things as I go. Every day now I'm noticing, well, I didn't do that right. I didn't do that right. I need to do this better. It's called bettering oneself. There are so many things that go into our health. It would not be possible for me to learn everything in one day. I've been studying my health for years. So I know pretty much what's good for me and what's not good for me. I know what has worked. I know what has not worked. I used to do the elliptical. I could do 4 miles in 16 minutes at one point. I can't do that now, but I could. And what did that do for me? Did it ruin my health? No. It made me stronger because I pushed myself. When you start out on elliptical, it's slow, because when I did, I was on a treadmill reading a book. I was walking so slowly because I was coming out of a situation where I was paralyzed. So I wasn't going like a speed demon on a treadmill or an elliptical. But when I started on the elliptical, I started slow, and I started with a 2-minute time period, and then a 5-minute, and then I incrementally added more time until I could do 4 miles in 16 minutes. And that was planned. That was by choice. That wasn't because I tried to ruin my health or make people think that I was trying to ruin my health, or give anybody the wrong idea that I was showing off, because that's not what it was at all. The only competitor in this life is myself. I don't look at anybody else and go, oh, they're a competitor. This is about my health, just like your health is about you. So when I was doing that on the elliptical, I had the strongest physique I ever had. I never measured my body fat, but I was at the height of my health. Yesterday, I read this woman was online asking for help. And she said, I've been doing the elliptical now, and I've been doing it for, say, 20 minutes at a speed of X. But I'm afraid to go faster because everything I've read says I will ruin my health. And you wouldn't have believed the comments she got. People were saying, oh, that's really bad for you. You should never go faster. Okay, so let's talk about that. What about somebody running a race? Should they not go faster or strive for faster? See how silly that sounds? So you think about people that have this bias or mindset or opinion based on what? Based on what? Have they done it? Probably not. I don't know these people. I don't know their abilities. I don't know their strengths. I just know what I did, and it did nothing for me but better my health. So if you want to go faster on an elliptical, by all means, do it. And don't listen to anybody else, because who cares? It's about you. If you don't feel comfortable going faster on an elliptical, don't. Take it slow, maybe do a longer period of time on it. But I found personally that I can't go too slow because it does nothing for me. It doesn't build muscle. It does nothing. I have asthma. Guess what? I don't need an inhaler. I keep a rescue inhaler on me at the gym, but I don't need it. I haven't needed an inhaler in years. Because that's what the elliptical did for me. It didn't ruin my health. It actually helped me. Think about somebody lifting weights, right? Same kind of concept. That would be like somebody saying, oh, you should never lift more than 100 pounds. Said who? There are people that are in, bodybuilding competitions that are lifting insane amounts of weight. I can't lift more than 100 pounds. That doesn't mean nobody can. People have developed these opinions based on nothing. It's in their head. They have an assumption, a bias, a warped viewpoint of something. But then they push it out on the internet as fact. There's another thing going on online. I've been walking on a treadmill lately. I see young people every day because my gym is mostly young people now, about 20-year-olds. I'm one of the oldest people at my gym. I'm in my 50s. And what I have seen are these young kids going at the pace of a turtle, holding onto the treadmill for dear life, and walking about 2 miles an hour. They look totally miserable. They're not smiling. They never interact, which you don't have to. I don't, so I get that. But they look absolutely miserable. Like somebody's forcing them to be there to walk on the treadmill because somebody told them that that was the way to health. I think any movement is better than none. So if somebody is on a treadmill walking, it's better than being on a couch. However, the new opinion that's out there is if you walk at an incline on a treadmill, which a couple years back, that's what everybody said to do, walk on an incline for better health. Now they're saying, oh, you can't do that if you hold on to the bar. If you hold on to the bar, then it negates anything you earn from the exercise. That is completely false. I'm living proof of that. And that is a dangerous opinion to be putting out there without fact. And let me just tell you why. When I walk at an incline on a treadmill, I bend my legs and I'm going uphill like I'm walking on a steep slope out in the wilderness, okay? The argument is you wouldn't hold on to a bar if you're walking up a steep slope. First of all, that's not true. Some people use a walking stick. Second of all, Think about older people. You really think they're going to let go? Fly off the treadmill? Okay, so that's an opinion, and that one is floating out in the internet world. And let me tell you something. That is what creates bias and negativity and hostility to people going to the gym. It all comes full circle. These opinions that are floating out there, you better make sure you're right and you come with facts. Because if you're distributing false information, it's not good for anyone. Okay? When I go to the gym and I walk in an incline, let me tell you, I'm holding on. I have back problems. I was paralyzed. My legs are shaky. Sometimes my legs give out. If I were to let go of that bar, I'd be flat on the floor. How is that even better? How is that safe? How is that better for my health? When I walk on an incline, my heart rate goes up, and that's what I'm trying to achieve. So whether you hold on the bar or not, it's not anybody's concern except the person who's doing the exercise for their own health. But that is the bias that's out there that I'm trying to tell you. Don't listen to it. We all have a journey to live. And if you are stopped in your tracks because somebody is spreading these opinions without basis, it affects everybody. It can affect your mental health. It can affect your well-being. I think it's a worse thing to do to put that out there on the internet without fact, because that will harm somebody because they won't even try. So let's go on to another example. I have a relative who is extremely opinionated. She has no basis for being so opinionated. She just is. Back in the early 2000s, do any of you remember the diaper cakes? They were very popular, and people made these beautiful assemblies of diapers and toys and hairbrushes and Ralph Lauren bears, and they put them together like a stacked tiered cake, and then they wrapped it up in netting or cellophane, and they would give them as gifts, and a lot of people would use them as the centerpiece at a baby shower. I don't know if those are still popular. My kids haven't been little in years. However, I got into making those as a hobby. So whenever I had a relative that had a baby, I would make them a diaper cake. The relatives that received these diaper cakes absolutely loved them. They were gorgeous, and I didn't skimp. I bought Pampers because these were gifts, and I made sure they had the best of the best, and I made these beautiful diaper cakes. In fact, somebody I knew wasn't even a relative, they were a friend, and they had this big baby shower, and I brought that diaper cake as a gift once. And they actually put it as the centerpiece on the head table because they didn't have a centerpiece. And I was just delighted. So one day I was working on a diaper cake and I was just about finished. I hadn't wrapped it with cellophane yet. And it was for my cousin's baby shower. And a relative stopped by and she said, "Hey, just stopping by. What are you doing?" I said, "I'm making a diaper cake." And this was her reaction. "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" This was her. That is the most disgusting thing I've ever heard in my life. You're making a diaper cake? You're sick. I had to think about that for a minute. I didn't get it because I'm like, is this a joke? What is she talking about? And I looked at her and I said, could you clarify that? What do you mean? It's disgusting. I'm not following you. She goes, "Are you demented or something?" I'm like, "I really don't understand where this is going. Do you have something to say to me or not? Because if not, I'm shutting my door. Flies are getting in. So what do you have to say?" And she said, "That is the most absurd, disgusting, obnoxious thing she's ever heard anybody do. A diaper cake." Okay, so the indignation came from ignorance. She had no idea what a diaper cake was, so she just naturally assumed. She thought I was taking Pampers and taking the stuffing out and mixing it up with some flour, baking soda, sugar, butter sticks, making a cake. That's really what she thought. She had no factual basis for thinking this. She had no life experience for thinking this. Somewhere in her brain, she connected the dots to mean she's making a cake out of diapers. Well, I thought she was actually joking and being sarcastic. She was actually being serious. So if that example doesn't say it all, I don't know what will. But my point is, whenever you are researching something or trying to look into something, back in the 70s and 80s, We had the library. We had the world books. We had encyclopedias that we could go to and look things up. Now it's all on the internet, and there are AI softwares and there's Siris and all these things, right? So now you just take your phone out and you say, hey, blah, 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 right? And it gives you an answer. But the answer that I'm noticing today is based on the bias and ignorant opinions of people who don't actually have facts. And it's scary to me because the youngest generation now growing up, that's the only thing they know how to do. I would highly anticipate that they aren't being taught how to look in an encyclopedia, and I hope I'm wrong. I don't even know if they still make encyclopedias. I have no idea. But imagine if you're 15 and you're with your cell phone and you're looking up, should I ride a bike on this hiking trail? And it comes back and says, no, absolutely no way. That is the most dangerous exercise because one time in 1985, a guy hit a rock, flipped over the handlebars, and, broke his spine. Now he's in a nursing home for the rest of his life. So that young person says, oh, now they're afraid. They're afraid to try something. They're afraid to ride a bike. And that's how it's happening. Yesterday, I was looking up something and I got a double answer. And I've seen other people talking about this. Hey, Siri, is this good for me? And she came back and she says, oh, yes, that's an excellent thing to do. And then under that, she said, and I wish I screenshotted it, but I didn't. I should have, though, to put it in here. And then at the end, she said, that's very unhealthy. She gave me a double answer because it was all based on forums online, YouTube videos, TikTok trends, and Instagram posts. Don't let life burden you with the assumptions that are being strewn out into the world as fact. Because that's going to limit you. And you'll never better yourself if you just go by what you hear. You'll never get past your own capabilities. You'll never be able to push yourself to greater success and achievements if all you're listening to is the garbage being strewn online. It's become more imperative than ever to protect ourselves, to have our own self-esteem, our own values, and to help protect youth. Don't let the world get you down. Stick to your focus. Stick to people who align themselves with your values. Be strong in your value system. Know yourself. I hope this helps somebody out there today. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.